almost 20 years, Johnny's been a cornerstone of Monster Energy's racing program, a pioneer in his craft and a man who helped define what our brand represents, especially in the Midwest, where his reputation as a racer and still is legendary. He helped us and many other sponsors build credibility. Back when a time when not a lot of people knew who our brand was, Johnny was the perfect representative. I had the privilege of being Johnny's agent and best friend long before I became his sponsor at Monster. Our connection began back in the early 2000s with our sons Thomas and CJ racing every weekend. Through that experience, I got to know Johnny, not just as a racer, but as a father and a husband and a family man. Our friendship grew deeper, and it's something I still cherish today. Out of all the racers Monster has sponsored over the years, I can tell you, Johnny Greaves stands in a class of his own. He's not just a wheel man, he's an innovator, a designer, a motocross racer, arguably one of the biggest influences of the sport since legends like Ivan Stewart and Mickey Thompson. But what truly sets Johnny apart isn't just his skill on the track, it's his character off of it. Whether in the shop with his team or at home with his family, Johnny's someone who leads by example. I've learned a lot of lessons from Johnny over the years. Maybe I'll share a few here. You know, I met Johnny the very first time at a racetrack in Georgia at an AMA motocross event with Thomas and CJ Racing. I didn't know Johnny or CJ, but luck would have it, Thomas and CJ took each other out in the last turn. And so everybody was upset. You know how moto dads are. But anyway, as I was getting ready for the second moto, I couldn't crank the bike and I had a foul spark plug. Now, I looked around and the only person in the pits that had a bike like Thomas's was Johnny Greaves. So I walked over, introduced myself and said, "You don't happen to have an extra spark plug, do you?" He looked up at me and he goes, "Your kid took mine out in the last moto." He smiled real big and then he started laughing. He said, "Sure I do." So I said, "Well, you wouldn't happen to have a wrench too, would you?" "I don't have a spark plug wrench with me." He starts laughing. He said, "Why don't you just bring the bike over and let me work on it?" So I bring Thomas's bike over and let his biggest competition's dad get his bike ready for the second moto. But that's the kind of guy Johnny is. Another story that tells you a lot about Johnny is at the races, people used to set up at night. Johnny couldn't go to sleep at night because his competition and everybody else in the pits were coming over getting advice for Johnny on how to set their truck up or how to set their suspension up. It was nonstop. And I used to always try to get Johnny just to come go to bed and get some rest. But instead, he would set up and even go to his competitors' pits and get up under their trucks and work on their truck in the middle of the night. Again, that's just the way Johnny was. And he was a true influencer in the sport. Another story about Johnny that I gotta tell is when we first started racing with our kids, he said, "You're a business guy, how about finding me some sponsors?" I said, "Well, I don't know anything about it, Johnny." He said, "I'll buy you a ticket to Las Vegas. You fly out to Las Vegas to Supercross and walk around because I want some of those cool Supercross sponsors." So I did. I go out there, I walk around. I barely know Johnny and I really don't know what I'm doing in the motorsports world, but I see a party going on. I go over and say, "Who's in charge of marketing here?" And it was a Monster Energy party. Guy comes out named Joe Parsons. He goes, "What do you need, buddy?" I says, "Well, I represent an off-road truck racer named Johnny Greaves." He goes, "Johnny Greaves? He's a legend." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's my guy." And I was blown away because I didn't figure they'd know who he was in California because I just met him. And so we end up, he says, "I've already spent my money on another team. I wished I'd have known it a week ago, but can I just get stickers on the side of his helmet? I'll pay you good for stickers on the side of the helmet." I said, "Well, I don't know. I'll have to call Johnny." So I called Johnny and I tell him. He goes, "Monster, they're cool." He says, "I'd love to have that." I said, "Just go just take whatever he offers. I'll do it. Just whatever you can get, 10 grand. So I go back and I say, "Hey, Joe, it'll be 70 grand. Joe's like, 70 grand? That's crazy." He says, "Will you take 40? I said, "I don't know. I'll have to check." But the rest is history. If I could only say one thing about Johnny, he's got a true racer's heart. He told me one time, he said, "When we come to the track, I want to be the fastest guy here. I want everyone in the stands to know I'm the fastest guy here. I want all my competitors to know that I'm the fastest guy here. And I want me to know I was the fastest guy here, and regardless of the results of the race." And that formula worked out really well, Johnny. You've won a few races. Johnny is not only an exceptional racer, he's a role model for other people in the sport. Of all the people Monster Energy sponsors, I always tell the kids, if there's somebody's career that you could emulate, Johnny Greaves is a good one to look at. He is not only a great racer, he understands everything there is to know about his sport, but he also knows how to run a team. He knows how to treat employees over a long period of time. So I'm a fan of Johnny Greaves in a lot of ways.